Wer schon mal an einer Generalversammlung war, gerade bei größeren Unternehmen, weiß, dass die Aktien meist so breit gestreut sind, dass der Einzelaktionär kaum etwas zu sagen hat. Damit ist die nötige Verbindung zwischen Besitz und Unternehmen gestört. Dies muss nicht sein, wie uns Thomas Prehn, Mitgründer und CEO von SHARELEAP, jetzt erklären wird.
Better?
Ja.
Thank you. And first of all, I would like to apologize for my Swiss German. I don't speak it at all, so it's been a very interesting morning. Actually, I wish that I would have understood a little bit more of what Oliver said about the feeling Aktionär, because that's what we're going to talk about today, or for now at least. It's called empowerment of the long tail of shareholders, and I will just jump into that immediately. So shareholders, what are shareholders? Shareholders in average, in a very rough perspective, is like 80% of the value of companies is held by, very roughly, institutional and major shareholders, whereas retail shareholders hold the remaining 20%. But remarkably, as individuals, the retail shareholders often counted as heads. The retail shareholders is more than 99.90% of the company shareholders. So as individuals, they are a lot of people, sometimes even hundreds of thousands of shareholders. I just checked yesterday with the Swiss bank UBS. They have 330,000 individual retail shareholders, and they hold approximately 17.6% of the shares. So you have an enormous amount of retail shareholders holding 20% of the shares of the UBS bank. It is these hundreds of thousands of shareholders that we want to reach out to. We call them the long tail of shareholders. Even though you might, one of your points could be that, admitted, yes, they have a fairly small amount of the shares within the company. And they will not be able to establish a real majority vote, as there are only like 20% of the company. But when you count in their, even though it's small, the 20% of shareholding, as well as their headcounts, they do provide a very solid base for the shareholder or for the public listed company. And they have some benefits with them as well. For one, they trade less frequently. This leaves the stock price and the share price less volatile. It's stable. They are at least mostly positive ambassadors for the company's values and products. They might even be able to bring in ideas and thoughts to the company. They're often a solid customer base. They buy your products. They use your services. And finally, in case of a hostile takeover, 20% is more than enough and a welcome safeguard against the buyer. So with the 20%, you can turn down most offers. And as I just mentioned, those retail shareholders are very loyal to the company, and therefore they will always, not always, but mostly, be very faithful to the recommendations of the management within the company. So there are real benefits, and a lot of benefits, with the retail shareholders. Even though it is so, the benefits of the retail shareholders, we don't see companies use, they don't have true focused retail investor relations efforts today. I think it's because if companies had to truly reach out and facilitate in a traditional fashion a more rich relation between itself and its shareholders, the complexity and the cost of it would reach enormous heights, and therefore the cost-benefit of it will not be valuable. So I won't say it's bad will, mostly anyway. It's due to the limited resources of investor relations department that they only focus on the major shareholders. But in doing so, they disconnect the smaller shareholders from the formal dialogue and the decision-making within the company. And for now, that is the annual meeting. In some sense, the annual meeting is the only point of influence and governance today for small shareholders. But the shares in public listed companies are so widespread that as a genuine framework for influence, the annual meeting just doesn't function as it is built today. That's some of the points that you made, Oliver, as well. And this means that the actual relationship between companies and its shareholders is broken, as it is today. For smaller shareholders, in case of discontent or similar, they are often left with selling their shares as the only way of expressing their feelings. And in some severe cases, we see shareholder activism. We've seen a few within the last 12 months. We saw the Citibank executive pay, and I think UBS had one as well on executive pay as well. So what we are trying to do at SHARELEAP is fixing that broken system, to fix the annual meeting. It's not a virtual annual meeting. It's not digitized voting, such as the services of computer share and stuff. It's tapping into the relationship of the companies and the shareholders. So the trends that we play three trends. We see the number of retail shareholders is growing these years. In the US, on an average, every second adult has shares in the public listed companies, privately held or through pension funds. In Europe, it's a bit less. It's on average 17%, ranging from 10 to 25% in different countries. The number two trend is the paradigm of shareholding is shifting. We see a change in the way that shareholding is governed. It's not just about making an everyday day trading buck. It's become more active. So what we see, and we see in the UK Stewardship Code as well, a lot of companies in the fall of the financial crisis signed the UN, the UNPRI, which is a code of conduct where companies, not companies, but shareholders, institutional shareholders, declare that they will have active ownership. So we see that the shareholding paradigm is shifting onto more active shareholding. And the third trend is that information technology will be lowering, it has already done that, but it's still lowering the barriers of engagement. And just to name a few examples that you probably know, with the rise of information technology, we've seen on social media, we have seen solutions like the Get Satisfaction. Do you know that one? All right. And the Dell Idea Storm, where the customers come with ideas for Dell's next improvements. So we see information technology lowering the barriers for companies, stakeholders to engage and involve within the company. So these, hang on, do a bit of magic. These emerging trends suggest that investor relations, as many other things have been through, definitely will change by push or by pull. If investor relations were to embrace this new paradigm and see the retail shareholders as a resource instead of a problem, they would be able to strengthen the loyalty from this group, increasing the company's credibility in public relations. And through an ongoing access to the customers, the shareholders, build a deep insight and their opinions, to their opinions and their knowledge and creativity. So the retail shareholder is an asset for investor relations. So the key is to build a service where you can benefit from these assets with a reasonable cost benefit. And that left us with a very simple idea. We will use social technology, or we are already using social technology, to engage and empower the long tail of small retail shareholders. We want to reconnect companies with their shareholders by rebuilding the broken arena, the annual meeting, and with the social technology create transparency and a tangible relations for both parties. So that's what SHARELEAP is all about. It's a digital platform where shareholders, they will be able to share and unify around thoughts and ideas. They will be able to coordinate actions, pool their proxies, that will be their influence, as well as creating and jointly put forward proposals for the agenda. As it is today, even though you have people like MoxiVote, where you have like a preset of proxies, so you say, I'm for everything environmental, so please vote that through for me, you're still set up with the actual agenda of the company. So what we want to do is prolong the process and digitize the actual creation of the agenda for the annual meeting and have shareholders to participate in that process, putting forward agenda proposals, and in that sense, regain influence in the company. For companies, they will be able to engage in a structured and qualitative relation with the shareholders, no matter the size, even if it's 1,000 or 300,000. And it will be with a reasonable cost benefit, while adding transparency to the way of governance, as well as tapping into the benefits of the small shareholders, as I just mentioned them before. We have built a functional preview edition. It's not open yet. It's invites only. But it's a functional prototype. It has a company profile for each of the companies within the product, within the service. It has proposal creation. It has, we call it beta voting, because it's not really integrated yet. And then it has queries. As you all know, these subjects from annual meetings. I will not bore you with a lot of screenshots. Just quickly run you through a couple of them. That'll be the company profile and the proposal generator. But if you'd like to see more, just leave me a business card or anything. I'll happily to let you in on the preview edition. So this is the company profile. It doesn't look like your ordinary investor site, and that's on purpose. We have 4 ways of scoring the company. It's the company performance on financials, on the environmental issues, social issues, and how they govern in the company. The 3 last one, the ESG, is a Bloomberg standard. The financial one is one that we have built and constantly improving. But that will give the shareholder, the user of SHARELEAP, a quick and alternative overview of the company. We also ask shareholders to give their thought on the score. So do they agree with the Bloomberg score? And that will give us some sort of community sentiment of the company. But to really state that this is not your traditional investor site, we mostly for the fun of it, and because it's only a prototype, left out stock prices. But this is, I think that eventually we'll have them back on. But for now, it's to state that this is really not a place for day trading. This is a place for committed shareholders with a long-term interest in the companies. The next one is the proposal generator. Everyone can create a proposal as long as you're a shareholder within the company. There are some rules in the States in general, but there's also different governance rules within each company. But we are compliant to those rules. So anyone can create a proposal, and you motivate your proposal. Why do I think this is a good idea? Below the fold, you'll have like the opposing statement from the company, and trust me, whenever there's a shareholder proposal, there will be an opposing statement from the company. We have seen no shareholder proposals without opposing statements. So of course, there will have to be opposing statements as well. And a bit further down the page, you will also have a discussion between the companies and between shareholders, and between shareholders and companies. And we are really working on to keep that a very constructive setting. Over here, you can just see where we're at in the process. So you have like a proposal draft. That's just for the shareholder. Then you promote the proposal. Now it's public for people to comment on. And then you can see if it goes to the agenda or how it's settled finally at the end. So as you can see, we've really worked hard with the governance compliance, tapping into the existing processes and setup of today. In a sense, we just digitized the old way of investor relations and corporate governance. Of course, because you're able to, when you digitize something, you can add some, let's inherit in social media, like discussions. You can prolong it and stuff like that. But overall, we're just trying to fix the broken system as it is today, with the possibilities of existing technology. There's nothing hocus pocus within this project. One of the abilities from social media that we are leaning on is its capability to handle large complexity. But when you do so, when you introduce social media or social technology or digital technology, you also get some other benefits, some other abilities. And that is to mobilize and involve on a large scale. It's to share and to collaborate. And it's to add transparency and empowerment to the shareholders. So for us, this governance compliant, as it is today, is just like the very first small step towards a whole new way of governance. We truly believe that at some point, I don't think it's in a very distant future, we'll see a whole new way of governance. It's going to be called for by transparency and connectivity provided by the digital media. The future of investor relations and shareholding is not just going to be another 2.0. It's going to be completely different. It's going to be a paradigm shift. For instance, the immediacy, the connectivity, and the transparency of technology will probably make the annual meeting obsolete. Because when you no longer inherit that you will be fixated in time and place to govern a company, then why just do it once a year? You could almost do it every day. So we truly believe that we will see a completely new paradigm, not just in investor relations, but in the way that we govern companies. So what we bring is a totally different approach, where we promote the proactiveness of shareholding. Not just, as I mentioned before, just by voting the already existing agenda through on preset proxies, but by creating and promoting proposals for shareholders themselves, and hereby defining the agenda of the annual meeting and share the influence of the individuals. And most of all, by, in a digital native manner, creating a new way of relationship between companies and its shareholders. Where shareholders will be empowered through the ability to synchronize thoughts and ideas, and to create and promote proposals, and to coordinate their actions around their proposals. In some sense, we will enable the smaller shareholders to become virtual major shareholders, and enable to take majority votes as well. Remember, seeing enormous headcounts might swing institutional investors as well. So just the transparency of seeing hundreds of thousands of shareholders having an opinion, agree on an opinion, put forward a proposal, that will be able to swing institutional shareholders as well. Another complementary way of empowerment lies in the documentation and in the transparency of digital media. I think those two in themselves will completely disrupt investor relations and shareholding altogether. Because even though the small shareholders, as we agreed upon in the beginning, themselves don't hold a true majority, for a company to turn your back on hundreds of thousands of shareholders, of stakeholders within your company, is a very tough call. And just to bring out an example, there was, I don't know if you know, but there was, on the annual meeting for Citigroup, they discussed a raise of payment for executives. And it was after huge shareholder activism and engagement, it was turned down. It was a no vote. But it wasn't really a binding vote. But Citigroup stuck with it because turning down that many shareholders would be like a public relation nightmare. So there lies an empowerment just in creating transparency within all the heads within the company. So not just the majority of shareholding, or the majority shareholders, but also the majority of heads. So we're sure, we're quite certain that we're looking into a completely new paradigm for shareholding, for investor relations, for corporate governance. We hope to be the beginning, so check out SHARELEAP and join the beginning today. And then in the future, let's make sure that all shares equals influence. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Any questions before we go to lunch?
It's a tough slot just before lunch.
Just wondering what type, I assume you're selling this service to the board or to the executive officers of publicly traded companies. What kind of feedback are you getting from them in terms of, are they really sort of in favor of having tools that would increase shareholder activism in this regard?
First of all, this is not supposed to be shareholder activism. This is supposed to just fix the pipes between the company and its shareholders. For, I don't know, 50 years ago, you had like 100 shareholders within the company. You could meet in a place like this. You can debate, you could discuss, you could turn the meaning, the opinion in the crowd in a single speech, and then afterwards you could vote on it. That's not going to happen anymore because you have like 330,000 of UBS, shareholders in UBS. So it's not about shareholder activism. It's just fixing that, that pipeline between the two. Secondly, we're based in Copenhagen and mostly been discussing this with international, though Danish companies, like Novo Nordisk, the pharmaceutical company, Vestas, the windmill company, Pandora, the jewelry, and Coloplast, another pharmaceutical company. And they all are quite positive. Actually, on different terms. So you have Vestas, which the shares plummeted 95% over the last 6 years, I think. So there you have a lot of angry small retail shareholders. But to reach out to them and be able to have a dialogue that hasn't got like the spin of media or the spin of investor relations societies is quite important for them. So they would really love to go into ShareLeap. It's the same with Pandora. For Novo, it's like an extension of their already huge openness in communication and a extension of the corporate social responsibility. So for them, it's interesting as well. So what we see now is positive. Of course, there will be companies that will not be happy for this service. And for those companies, I think that would be like a push approach. So you will still have like, because if you have shares in one place, you often have shares somewhere else. And we can move people around to different companies. So for one company, we'll go from the top down. And in other companies, we'll go bottom up. Eventually, like the get satisfaction model, you'll be on our service, hopefully. But the take that we're approaching right now, because we really want to differ from the shareholder activism, is the positive approach. Actually, I think shareholder activism is more about shareholders, frustrated shareholders that don't have like the ventil for letting steam off. So instead, they end up doing shareholder activism. But if they could aggregate and unify around the decisions or their opinions, I think they would be better off themselves as well. So I'm not sure that we're going to see that much shareholder activism if we get success, though.
Okay, wir nehmen noch 2 Fragen.
Hello. My question is, who's paying and for what?
The companies are paying. So what you see in the screenshots is the front end for the shareholders. We have an additional front end for companies. So companies will be able to access a company page where they have like the ability to have there are different sets of tools. For instance, they will have a more visible placement on the website, on the company profile. They'll be able to engage with the shareholders on the website. They will be able to aggregate a lot of data and a lot of statistics. And if you have like 100,000 shareholders on ShareLeap, the price isn't that high. And for each of those heads, it's very cheap. Having a general assembly, annual meeting, or sending out printed materials, that's very expensive. I think one of the departments in corporate companies that still have a lot of money are investor relations. They spend tons of money on at least try and communicate with the small shareholders. So just sending out printed material for 330,000 shareholders, that's quite expensive. I don't know about postal prices here in Switzerland, but in Denmark, that would be a lot of money. So having the possibility of engaging the shareholders through this channel, that's...
As we heard, it's highly regulated, so you have certain things to do even if they are...
Exactly. Exactly. This is like the beginning of the digitized version of investor relations. So this is like the first step, and the first step would primarily focus on shareholders. But being compliant to all of the regulations is, of course, necessary for us to function.
Okay, last question.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. I see the advantages for a company to communicate and to reach to all these shareholders. But as a shareholder, of course, we have seen some examples saying, okay, these executives are, the salary of the executive are too high, and we lost like 50% of our share price. But do you really think that for a lot of the retail shareholders, how do you call them, the importance is actually that they might gain money on the share price, and actually a lot of these shares are held by wealth manager, not even the person actually behind the shares, and actually this engagement is not like a real need on the shareholder side?
I think that shareholder activism tells us a different story. I think that you will see more active shareholding. The UK stewardship, as I just mentioned, that institutional investors signed on, so they need to be active in their shareholder relation as a shareholder. So I think that, well, at least that's one of the trends we're playing. So of course we hope so, but I think that you will see shareholders be more active within the companies. The financial crisis is just one of the push that will help people or shareholders to engage within the companies. But I also think that most of the retail shareholders is not shareholders in the company to make a daily buck. It's not investment for the the dividend that we were told today. It's more an investment because they want to claim their loyalty to the company and they want to be part of that story, that value within the company. And in that sense, I think you will be much more engaged than you are today. But it will take for the barrier to be very low, and it will take an agenda on an annual meeting that is not just made by the company itself. It has to be shareholder proposal as well, because they come with a completely different approach to the annual meeting.
Okay, thank you.